Have you ever been in a situation where you were talking to somebody and you knew what you were trying to say and you wondered if they understood it, and then you come to find out that they didn't really understand what you thought? It creates a very awkward situation, right? So my name is Clara Harrison. I'm one of the communication instructors out here at JCC. And today we're going to be talking about that problem when you're trying to communicate and things don't quite work the way that you wanted them to. Communication scholars use what we call a communication model to handle this. Communication model is basically a diagram that looks at 7 common elements that are present anytime you communicate. Whether it's on the phone, you're sending a text message, you're leaving a comment on Facebook. These are elements that are going to be present. And so today we are going to be looking at these 7 elements: your speaker, message, channel, listener, feedback, interference, and a situation, in order to analyze a communication situation together. Okay, so let's take a look. So over here on the board, what we have got is a pretty common communication example. This is a person who is giving a message to a group of listeners at a conference. Okay, fairly standard in the business world. So our first element of our communication model is going to be our speaker, and that is easy to identify as this gentleman here on the left. He's the person that communication is coming from. If you're on the phone, you're calling the doctor to make a doctor's appointment, that's going to be you. It's the person initiating the communication, all right? Our second element is also easy to get. This is going to be our message. So our message is whatever we are trying to let people know. Okay, so if you're trying to ask someone on a date, you're trying to talk to your teacher about your grade, your message is whatever you're trying to communicate. So in this example, our message for this guy over here is going to be, he is fundraising, and so he wants people to donate him some money. He's looking for money, okay? So that's going to be our message. Our next thing we want to look at is going to be our channel. Now when you hear the term channel, you might be thinking like Fox, CBS, NBC. That can be an example of a channel. But when we're thinking about communication, the term channel gets used to describe any way that a message gets from your brain out into the world. So in this example, not only is our person opening up his mouth to talk, he's also using a microphone, which you can kind of see right here. He's got a microphone. That's an example of a channel. With you watching this video at home, you are also using a channel. Other than just hearing me speak, you're watching this video probably on YouTube or Blackboard. That's an example of a channel. Okay, so we've looked at 3 elements dealing with our speaker. We're done with him for now. Okay, now we're going to be focused on the right side of the board. So our listeners are probably the biggest area where things can kind of get a little dicey. So we've got our group of 3 listeners over here. Something important to note about listeners is that everybody's different. You've heard that said a million times, right? Every person is unique. Well, that's very true in communication. People can understand things differently. Slang is a great example of this. Think about a teenager. If you tell a teenager something is lit, they're going to understand that differently than if you tell your grandma who's 82. They're not going to interpret that the same way. So you want to be careful with listeners. Think about who's in your audience, okay? Now, when we're talking to people, anytime we talk to people, we're always getting feedback. Feedback is going to be our next element, and this is where things can get really interesting. Okay, feedback is usually nonverbal, and it lets the speaker know how they're doing. So let's take a look at our board up here. So we've got this person who is smiling, this person who is frowning, and this person who has kind of a neutral expression, all right? If we are dealing with people in facial expressions, okay, if everybody in the audience is kind of mixed, we might be just sort of doing okay. If everybody's smiling, we're probably doing pretty good. If everybody's frowning, we know we need to change something up because you don't want people to be mad at you, okay? So feedback is typically, facial expressions are the most common, but it could also be something like clapping, a thumbs up, other hand gestures that we don't want to get. Okay, feedback is going to be nonverbal, lets you know how you're doing. The next one is going to be interference. Interference is kind of anything that keeps the message from getting from you to them. This can be internal and external. Okay, so external interference is going to be anything in the room itself. So let's say this gentleman is using his microphone and the batteries die. Nobody can hear him. Let's say he is speaking and he has the worst speakers in the world. They're just making noise. That's going to keep people from hearing him. Let's say the air conditioning goes out. Everybody's hot and miserable. Nobody wants to sit and listen to you. Okay, that's external. That's something we can control. We can call maintenance. We can get them to look at things. We can pop some new batteries in the microphone, we can handle that. Internal interference is a little different. This is when you're dealing with issues on the inside. So let's say this person here is frowning because, see that's he's hungry. That's his stomach. He's hungry. Okay. If I'm hungry, I'm not going to be listening to you. It's a fact. We get hungry. Okay. Maybe this person in the middle is not smiling because he thinks you're that great. Maybe he's smiling because he's got a hot date tonight. Okay, so internal interference is anything that kind of keeps you from focusing on your speaker. Not always something you can deal with, but it's something important to be aware of. Okay, our last and final element of our speech communication model here is going to be the situation. This is going to be the time and the place that your communication occurs. If your communication occurs right before lunchtime, we're going to have a lot of this guy here where he's hungry and we're dealing with that. If your communication occurs at 4:30 and everybody's getting off work at 5, people are going to be thinking about their dinner plans, things like that. Okay, so we can sometimes schedule the time we speak in order to make it better for our audience. The other thing is going to be the event or the place where the communication occurs. If this person's speaking at a business conference, that's going to be great because these people, if they're at a business conference, presumably are going to be willing to invest some money. However, if this person's asking for donations at Nana's funeral, that's not going to go over so well. Nobody wants to give you money at a funeral. So, important things to think about. So to kind of wrap this up, there are 7 elements that are present anytime you communicate. We've got our speaker, our message, the channel, and then we've got our listeners, the feedback, the interference we might be receiving, and our situation. So if you want to be a better communicator, communicate more effectively, these are things to be aware of. If you're having problems, you can look at them, maybe get some things fixed. So if you have any questions about this, my contact is below. Please let me know. You can either leave a comment under this video or send me an email. I'm happy to answer questions. Have a great day and hopefully communicate better. Thanks.